Hi, I am Donna Nemo, and I am doing my video discussion for the article review. I thought that this article was very interesting. Obviously, as an athletic trainer, I'm going to find great interest in stuff like this. So I think that it was really interesting to see it from a strength and conditioning point of view rather than an athletic training point of view. I feel like this article really looked at things that I normally consider and I worry about as an athletic trainer. I saw it from a strength conditioning side of view instead of mine. So I think that, it was really interesting to me. I really hadn't had much experience or knowledge of what DUP training was. So I think that this kind of opened my eyes a little bit of that, and just kind of help me to think and process through how or why someone would think that this would be a good type of training. And I definitely, when you look at it face value, you can see that, obviously going to failure is going to build endurance. The strength aspect of it, you do see great gains with that, and things like that. So I can see the benefits of it. And it was also really interesting to see, the block periodization, which is my periodization that I'm studying more in depth, see how that's used, and see, at what levels that is really held to. And I also think it was really interesting how they related the testosterone and cortisol ratio to it. So I really didn't, going that deep into thinking it. When you think about it at face value, you don't really think it has that much effect on it. But when you, go into it like this does, especially when it talks about the metabolic alterations in which they, operate, it's really interesting to see just what they actually do. So a few things that I noted from an athletic trainer standpoint of view that might have affected this study is what prior history the athletes have of injury. I don't know if they looked at that or if those were any questions raised, but I would be curious to see if a returner had an injury last season or something like that, were they dealing with any of the residual effects from it? Was it fully healed? Were they performing at their top ability or not? So I think that, and obviously coming back from those types of things, it's going to have you lifting below where you were before or where you normally train at. And it's going to affect how you lift going forward, even, not only physically, but also mentally, because if you're as an athlete, you're worried about getting injured again, then you're not going to play or perform the same way. So I would be interested to see if that had any correlation, as to why or if there would be a difference in that, or if that would have anything to do with it. Maybe that would be a further study or a different study, I don't know. But I would be interested to see what kind of history that there was with any of the returning athletes, or if there were any major injuries or anything like that they did have to deal with, and how the mental aspect of it dealt with. So getting into the actual study itself, I really found it interesting how they determined workload and the monotony and strain, and I found it very interesting that they left it up to the coaches, because my experience with coaches are not going to think exercises or certain practices as tough as it actually is, because they're not the ones doing it. And obviously, having a coach that is able to be realistic about how difficult something is, or, how much they're really putting their athletes through, is something I find very rare, especially, working with coaches every day. So I think that, that was really interesting, and I would be interested to see if there was a more uniform, or if there was a more formulated way to calculate the actual workload or the actual monotony, rather than just going on estimated exercise by the coach's point of view. If they had more, concrete set definition of what it was, if that would have affected the results any. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Yeah, I don't know about that one. And I feel like that is one of those things that really could sway the data. So if a coach is really not saying something is as difficult as it is, or like, you know, he's really, really like not being honest with himself or what is actually difficult for the athletes, then I mean it could have a big impact on this study. So that would be one thing I would be really interested to see. I did also find it very interesting that there was only a 40% injury incidence in the block group, and that everyone in the DUP group had an injury of some kind. Now, whether it was a Jurassic injury or not, they didn't really go into much detail about. But I do think that, you know, that is kind of odd. I guess you could understand it, being that, you know, with block training, they're gonna build upon build a skill and build upon that skill in the next phase that they go through. So obviously, you know, those being able to build like that is going to help your muscles and help your body develop and help it to adapt, so it won't be such a big shock, rather than DUP training, you know, changing your repetitions and stuff like almost daily. You know, that would be difficult for the body to adapt to. So I think that's probably a big reason why. But I still find it kind of interesting that everybody in the DUP group had an injury. So I would not want to be their athletic trainer. Let's just say that. But overall, I think that this was a great study and it was a great read. I would just be very interested to know more details and more specifics of what actually happened and if those workloads were actually realistic. So thanks.